Just to let everybody know, we'll do roll call, and if you happen to have any community updates at the time of your roll call, please feel free to share. Welcoming new member Angela Yoon. Don't know if she's able to join.
I'm sure she will be here shortly, so we'll welcome Angela when she gets on.
Okay. Brad?
Present. No community updates.
Thank you. Christina? Connie?
Here.
Daniel Brown?
Dan is here.
Daniel Burlingame? David Norwood? Dave Wynn? Elizabeth? Gail Manswitz? Gail Dugan?
I did see Gail. Yes, he's on.
James Hagar? Jason?
Here. No updates for the area.
Thank you. Jeffrey Dutton? I actually forgot to take Jeremy off. His email no longer works. So by default, he's no longer on. And he hasn't joined in a long time anyway. Joe Kang?
I don't see Joe on.
John Breeze?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank
No
you.
updates.
Thank you. Justin? Ken Harvey? Laura Ogar? Leah? Lynn Knopf?
We've got a Lynn that's a guest, but I'm thinking maybe Lynn McIntosh.
Lynn McIntosh.
And that is right. It's Lynn McIntosh. Okay.
Thank you, Lynn.
Uh-huh.
Margaret? Mary?
Here.
Pam? Patty?
I'm here. No update.
Richard Burns?
Here. No update.
Rick Radisky?
Here.
Bob Pataki? Samra?
I don't see Samra.
Sandy? Shalene? Stacy Taylor? Teresa? Tony?
Here.
Thank you. Tyler?
Here.
You? Bill Burnett?
Yep.
Thank you.
And I see Lynn's got her hand up. She probably wants to give an update.
Wow, Abigail, you can just read my mind.
We're in sync, Lynn. We're in sync.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would like to give an update. I'm very grateful for the meeting that Abby attended and Karen Vorse and Leah Geese that we were able to have regarding the new MPART site on 11 Mile in Cortland Township. There were over 60 people who came, and it was great to get some information from the actual people who came to help figure this out. And Mark Whirl was there, who is an excellent geologist. And I just feel a great sense of relief knowing that the word is out, and hopefully that the township will also try to contact people who might be outside the study. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. So guess what? I will leave it at that. But thank you. I felt like the Sandy and I being there as COG representatives were able to bring in a different perspective, but the whole meeting I thought went very well. So there you go.
I agree, Lynn. It did seem to go very well, and we got a lot of good conversation. So thanks for attending.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Oh, hi, Gail. We'll mark you down. Gail's here too. So Kelly.
15 members on then.
There we go.
Thank
All right. Mary, anything else you want to do before we shift over to the new director?
No, I'd be happy to have you introduce him.
Excellent. Well, by special request, Phil is here to introduce himself. I'm going to let him do his own introductions, but Phil officially started what, July? So I think you've been here.
Yeah, I'm going on 3 months.
Full 3 months. So
Yeah,
be nice, be
veteran
nice.
here. Yeah.
A real veteran. Yeah, so Phil has been walking in and taking over the position of director for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and happy to have him. He graciously came and said he'd come and say hi and introduce himself to this group. I think some of you already know him from other various organizations, which he will talk about. But very encouraged to see Phil's leadership in the roles between Eagle and MPART, because it's obviously a strong relationship. So Phil, take it away.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, Abby, and it's a real honor to be here and really happy to talk to you all. I hope this is okay, but I'm noticing my new colleague, Sydney Hart, is on the line. You want to just go on screen and say hi? Sydney's our new legislative liaison for Eagle, and she comes to us from the state Senate, and she's seems to already have a command of things. So we've been really impressed with her and really excited that she's here. Welcome, Sydney.
Thanks, everyone.
So there you have it. If you have questions about legislation at any point, she can help. Well, great. I think job one here was just introduce myself, and then maybe I can tell you a little bit about what's going on at Eagle and 3 months into this, what I know about how we're approaching PFAS and some new directions we're going in. And we don't have everything figured out, but I'll give you an outline of kind of give you a sense of where we're heading. A little bit about me. I'm a true blue Michigander, 7th generation Michigander. My family's I got roots all over the state. They came in the 1820s, and to the Southwest Michigan and Northern Michigan. And then I grew up in Flint, where my parents and family was there for the auto industry. And I guess giving the deep background on why some of this stuff is interesting to me and passion around the environment. It goes back to, I guess this is a little bit PFAS like when I have a pretty strong memory growing up of being going to my grandparents' house. It was actually my grandmother and who was a housekeeper in this house of several kids and a single man who worked in the factory, in the foundry, I think, at General Motors. And that became where she lived like the rest of her life. And every morning, fresh coating of soot from the foundry that if you were there, you grab a broom or wipe it off. And I suppose back then we didn't think much of it, but I didn't exactly draw the connection to my kind of he wasn't my official blood grandfather, but he's kind of my common law grandfather. Had emphysema, and he had a big bag of, Kleenexes that he would, sort of spend his days sitting there and having emphysema. he was a smoker too, but there was, you know, my grandmother had the same thing and she wasn't smoking. So that was like a bit of an eye opener about just industrial degradation and contamination and the legacy of that, and just sort of tucked away in my head at that point that that's something that we shouldn't let happen and should keep from happening and should clean up. And then a lot of kind of pure Michigan kind of memories, and some of my ancestors had a little farm in northwest lower Michigan, and the farmhouse is still there. And then there's a little plot of land that I still steward along with my brother, and that was a big part of the memory. And trout stream right nearby, and you know, just the importance of keeping that clean and accessible for everybody. My background is, it's kind of a blending of two worlds. One is I've got a business background. That's been my day job most of my career. But I also have a pretty strong environmental advocacy background, particularly in the last 15 years or so. The business side, these may not sound like they have any relevance to my current position, but I was trained as a brand marketer. So I worked at Quaker Oats, and I was in charge of the Gatorade business for a while, and I worked at Little Caesars Pizza, head of marketing, and then I had various sort of president, CEO jobs for smallish companies like a gluten-free baking mix company, mostly consumer products. But then I also, about half my career was in consulting, and the way that evolved was just sort of helping organizations predict what the future was going to look like, and what would be some of the challenges and disruptions that would happen, and how to innovate and thrive amidst that. As over time it evolved toward a bit really mostly working with companies that were trying to make a positive difference in the world, and with a lot of environmental groups that sort of came out of the second part of my background, which is 15 years in environmental advocacy. And had mostly board and leadership roles in a number of organizations you guys are probably familiar with. Michigan Environmental Council was the first one. Michigan LCV was probably the one I was most active with. I was the board chair for a number of years, and I worked on the national LCV affiliate as well, on climate and water and other issues. And notably, when PFAS came about, MLCV was one of the organizations, along with National Wildlife Federation, which I was also on the board of, that was active in getting groups like GLPN supported, and giving voice to activists on PFAS. And then there's a group called the Wolf Pack, which does a lot of work on this issue now, and I was the chair of that until 90 days ago. And so we had a group dedicated to focusing on this issue and other issues, mostly clean water issues. I was on the Governor's Climate Council, and then this came about fairly suddenly for me, and took the job, had to divest from everything else that I was doing, and I've been in the role about 3 months. I could just share, if you guys are interested, just a little bit of what the experience has been like, and this will sort of lead up to where we've been heading on things. One thing that I'm really in this to have positive impact in the world. That's what I think you do. That's why this agency exists, to protect Michigan's air, land, and water, and all the people that depend upon it. And we ought to continue to be moving the needle forward in doing that. I sort of came with that idea, but what I spent probably the first month and a half mostly just talking to people, and got deeply into. I probably met, I don't know, if I had to guess, 60% of the 1,400 or pushing 1,500 employees of Eagle. I've been to several, maybe 4 of the district offices, and I've gone in depth, kind of like a consultant would do, and just tried to ask questions about, kind of size up the organization, what's working, what isn't, what are we good at? And it turns out there's like a pretty long list of things that we wouldn't think about as, boy, those are big successes. Like getting lead out of the drinking water in key cities, or addressing PFAS, or cleaning up contaminated sites. But actually, I've learned this more as I've worked with, I've met a lot of my peers in other state organizations. We're actually like a leader in a lot of these categories. And of course, we were, as a state, the first state to have its own MCL rules for PFAS. There's a lot of work to go, and nobody talks about this as a rousing success, but we're actually ahead of a lot of these other states, I discovered, and I didn't know that. And you guys, I know Abby knows that, but I was having people from other states talk about actually MPART and that model, and how could they replicate that? It's just been really interesting that we sort of get thought of as the leader in that area. So through all of that process, I discovered a few things. One is just really impressed with the people of Eagle. I'd heard, like, I don't think the agency always has the best reputation on the outside. It may just go along with being the regulator. You know, you're never making everybody totally happy, but you're guided by the law, you're guided by the science, you're trying to do the best possible. And I also just discovered a real ethic internally around doing the right thing. And I have really seen that around this issue, but every issue that we deal with. So through that process, about this still hasn't been really ratified, but maybe about 2 months ago, maybe after a month of being here, I worked with the team to come up with a new ambition for Eagle. And that ambition is to be an enduring national leader in environmental protection in a number of key areas. So national leader mean a top 5 state in that range, and to do it within the next 3 or 4 years. But also as part of that, do it in a way that's enduring. And this is what I heard a lot from people in the agency, is that when there's a change in administration, lots of good things that have been put in place end up going by the wayside. An office like Abby's may be created and then it goes away. And how do we make that enduring and keep the gains that we have along the way? Because they're certainly hard won. And the role that you all play in this group as a citizen advisory group is really important. And so we just want to keep moving forward with progress. So we set that goal. And then the next thing I did is this is still in process, is we went around all of the divisions of Eagle and all of the offices, including MPART, which resides within Eagle. And we've asked everybody to identify stretch impact goals. What are some big things that we could get done in the next small number of years that would really make a big difference in people's lives? And so we're still working through those and trying to prioritize them and get to where we can, what resources will be required. So anyway, that's one thing we did. The other thing is, we've built a plan that gets us to the vision, and it involves what I just described, like setting big goals and putting the resources we need and can get through the state budget process and federal grants and other ways, moved forward to achieve those stretch impact goals. But we also want to be even better at, I'll just call it communications and engagement. That's a real challenge in an agency where you're chronically underfunded, as we have been. This agency's I think 300 or 400 people short of the size it was, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't, this was a bigger agency. And of course, it used to be combined with DNR, and they had that combined force of resources. But when you're constrained, as we have been, people are wearing a lot of hats, and they're trying to respond to, could be from requests for information or help from people in affected communities. It could be businesses that are trying to navigate how to do permits. It could be a variety of things, as well as just ongoing monitoring and testing of situations. And so we're going to really try to dial up that engagement and our ability to, with all stakeholders. And all of the groups are going to have goals against that as well. We'll call them service, the ability to reach out and be responsive and helpful. And thankfully, we were granted in this last budget a number of new employees. Now the challenge is actually hiring people in a difficult job market right now. It's pretty tight, but we're going to go at it and keep at it and have talented people like Sydney join us. And we're already working on the budget for the next year after, that starts in October of next year. And we're asking for more people specifically in this engagement area. And we're also doing revamping some of our communications effort to try to improve our ability to get messages across and to communicate with folks all over the state. So those are some of the big things that we're doing. And specifically on PFAS, there's a couple of things. I imagine you guys are all aware of these, but they're things that have been kind of recent actions or things that have happened that I wanted to share with you. One is, I don't know, you're probably aware of the PFAS MCLs, and that, we're, as I said earlier, we were the first state, and we're one of the few states, I think, that actually has state-specific MCLs for PFAS. 3M filed a legal challenge to those standards and won in a lower court on a kind of a technicality related to there's a requirement to do an economic cost analysis as part of the rulemaking process, and they decided we didn't do a full enough job on that. So we've appealed to that, and now we've appealed to the Supreme Court. And what I can just tell you is, even if we lose that case or they decide not to hear it, we have the option of using an emergency rule to keep those state MCLs in place, and we plan on doing that. And now we're also working closely with the EPA as they're finalizing federal MCLs. And so then we'll probably make some changes in conjunction with that. But anyway, that's one thing if you weren't aware of it. Other things that have sort of hit the news: we sued Grand Rapids Airport for non-compliance on PFAS issues. Our teams had been working, there's a lot of groundwater contamination and just a lot of contamination from related to PFAS, related to firefighting foam and the usual suspects. And we just weren't getting anywhere in those efforts to get them to comply. So we took the step, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, of suing them, and hopefully that'll bring them to the table. Sometimes you have to do that, and that's, people sue us, and sometimes that's what we can do to kind of keep people honest. We also, just something, I don't have much to report on this, but in later dates, Sydney will probably have more to report. But there's, I think it's 5 different PFAS bills that have been drafted, and they go from, a ban on the use of PFAS to creating sentencing guidelines for crimes that involve violating the Hazardous Products Act. And I'm reading from notes Sydney gave me, because these are kind of hot off the press, and we haven't even had a chance to engage on those. But I think that's great that there's some action going forward. Some other states, I was just on the phone with a group of other states in the Great Lakes region, including Minnesota. They passed a PFAS ban, I think, about a year ago. And so in the event that bill moves forward, and we'll certainly be engaging with the sponsors of all these bills. But in the event that that one in particular moves forward, which we hear there's an interest in trying to move these forward fairly quickly, we'll have a lot to learn from Minnesota and a couple other states that have done this, that to really try to make those bills as good as we can. And I think I'll stop there. I've probably taken up way too much time here, but happy to answer any questions. But I wanted to just give you a sense of what I'm up to, and where we're going. And this is certainly a hot priority. We've got, I use that term enduring national leader, and nowhere is that more illustrated than on PFAS, which is like a big focus that we have right now on PFAS, is to embed it in all of our divisions within Eagle where it's relevant. And it's a lot harder for somebody to take it away if we do that. We're planning on doing the same thing with climate. But I think we've done it probably relatively successfully, I think, on PFAS. We got 300 people working on it across the divisions. And yet at the same time, we have this unique model of MPART, which works across all of our departments as well as outside of Eagle into DHHS and other agencies. And it serves as kind of a rallying point. So we're going to continue to support that, but at the same time, really build the strength within the divisions. So it's embedded, it's here to stay, and it's here to keep growing and addressing the issues. And if we end up having other emerging contaminants that come up, we can apply the same model to that. All right, I'll leave it there. I see there's a couple of questions, so I'll let Abby moderate this because
I'll let Mary moderate since it's her meeting. So.
oh, okay.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Mary.
Mary. Yeah, I don't
No
know the
problem.
protocols here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Connie.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the COG. I'm very impressed by what I heard. Didn't quite expect you to be that impressive, but you are, and that's good.
Well,
That's
thanks.
good. I just have one. You've done a lot of work in meeting with the Eagle Division staff.
Mhm.
One thing you need to do, and this is really important, is to meet with citizen groups. For example, if we could have with you, just with the COG members, so that we could speak to you directly with issues that we see are problems at Eagle. Would you be willing to do something like that?
Is that, I don't want to violate any rules here. I mean, I'll talk to anybody most any time, but I don't know any of the history here of, have you done that before, or what's?
I think it's perfectly fine. I know that
Well,
Phil has got meetings set up with LCV, NWF, and GLPAN for what, 2 weeks? A week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's a week after.
So we are
next,
meeting
yeah.
with them, and so yeah, I don't see why that couldn't be set
Yeah,
up.
if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. And and I've known Tony Spaniola for quite a while, so and Sandy, so they've certainly bent my ear over the years on this, but I do want to get around and talk to people in other communities and hear. And I have engaged with Tony a bit on the wordsmith issue, and so want to be accessible to you guys. And would love to. I mean, I've done a lot of talking here. I'm really here to listen now and in the future, and to try to respond wherever I can.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Lynn.
Yes, thank you, and welcome, Phil, and also Sydney. It's so nice to have you join our meeting tonight. I would like to leave my comments to, well, after, I don't know if they're questions as so much as they are comments, but
Okay.
I was really glad that you were going to be at the meeting tonight. This is great, and after being in this part of this group and other groups, I've been I don't want to add the years that I've spent. I'd like to say that there are two things that are top of the list concerns for me, and maybe one of them goes into what we're talking tonight about notification. But one is Michigan's very unique position of having a quarter of its population on well water, private wells, which are not. There's no one looking after those people. It's because EPA, it doesn't include private wells in terms of their Safe Water Drinking Act. So I'm very concerned, especially like last week, I was telling you the group I attended this meeting, and though I was glad to go to the meeting and know that people were informed, I was very sad to hear about how much people have suffered in this area and how it was actually first brought to attention, sort of quasi attention, in 2018. It's right near the company Wolverine that
Mhm.
every other property has borne contamination, and we've got people out there who just like were blindsided. They had no idea. And I'm sure there are more people like that throughout Michigan. I am very concerned that there is a very strong way to communicate to the statewide, that if you're a private well owner, guess what? You're not protected. It's not that we don't care. There's just no laws, there's no standards for this. And how can we get these people's wells tested? I think it's okay. I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm going to go to the next one, and that is, I struggle also. I don't understand with the number of sites that we have. I don't know if we're up to what, 265 or more, Abby.
Yeah, I think we're at 265 or 266.
266.
Okay, so, and when I first started these meetings, it was under 100 for sure. I don't know as if more money has been allocated to MPART staff and to actual testing of private well. I mean, here we have like so many sites, and I'm like, so where's the staff? Where is the manpower to go out and support these hardworking people? And I scratched my head on that. Like, how can you do that if you don't have the resources you need? So I would like to advocate on behalf of, hey, you know, if you expand the need, you have to expand the resources. And so those are my two main things.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
Yep.
And we'd appreciate your support when we're in the budget process trying to get some of those approvals. What the PFAS, I think we haven't got, basically what it's done is it's people who were doing other things are working much more on PFAS, and there's been some incremental staff, but not up to the full
No,
scope of the problem,
needs to
for
change.
sure.
It really, that's like top of the list in my mind.
Yeah.
And notifying the public.
Yeah.
So, but I'd much rather talk like this, in a way, face to face.
Yeah.
As best as we're able to. And I appreciate your sincerity and your background. So, so that's it. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you,
And
Lynn.
Sydney.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Phil, I have one comment that was brought up in the engaging the public subcommittee.
Yeah.
And that was just before this meeting. And we just wanted to stress that when you are reviewing information on the COG, that you look at the public notification document that the COG had worked on for so long. It's been in process for years, and I think there's definitely people who feel that it's not quite being implemented yet. And we would like to see some action on that, but we would like to get your personal thoughts on it after you have reviewed it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I will do that, Abby, if you can help me get a hold of that. And
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We can do
You
that.
bet.
Gail.
All right, call Gail.
Oh, okay, there I am. I want to know if there was any action, and this isn't directly aimed at you, Phil. The whole group can answer this for me. Is there any action of helping to protect well owners? Because, like Lynn said, that's huge. If your well is no longer viable, you're being poisoned, and there seems to be no course of action for a well owner. Is there anything in the pipeline for legislative wise?
I
You
can
say
help.
something, Abby?
Yeah, I'll help you out, Phil. I don't know of anything legislative wise yet, Gail, but it is something we're talking as part of Phil's discussion on stretch goals and what would we like to see.
Yeah.
Provided we have funding, some of the other things we'd like to do is exactly that. And so we are discussing it.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up in a household where we had a well. My mother still lives on that property. And there are so many, and that and getting the word out so people know you need to test
Yeah.
your wells. And also maybe get some funding to help people test because it's so astronomical. It breaks the bank. And that's it. That's all I will say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Abby's right. That's one of the first things that she suggested as a list of things that we might consider going after here.
And I think we have definite evidence that people are concerned about their wells, because how long did it take, Abby, to get that $5 million used up?
Yeah, just like
4
that,
days.
right?
Just
4 days.
Yeah,
They had 15, and that wasn't for PFAS, that was for other analytes, but 4 days
Absolutely.
they had all $5 million used up. Yeah. Which,
but I think it's an indication that people are concerned, for sure.
oh yeah.
Tony, and then I think we have to move on to Paul Jackson as well, because he has a time constraint. So Tony.
Thank you. I just want to say, Phil, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. Really, really do appreciate not only what you had to say, but your presence here. As somebody who was involved in the COG before there was a COG, and remembers putting it together, remembers how things existed in Michigan before MPART existed and before there was a COG. I think you're the first director to actually come to this group. And I want to draw attention to that. And,
oh, wow.
And thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. And I also just want to say that the goals that you have set, particularly the stretch goals and leaving an enduring mark, I think are really, really important in light of what's kind of the dwindling away of the department over the years. And I guess I would just say that without going into a whole bunch of detail, I do think that as you look at the goals and you look at things moving forward, that getting the perspective of groups like this and people on the ground, I think is really critical. And I know that you have an understanding of that. I think that, as a lawyer, I typically see that the people who are on the front lines of fighting lawsuits are the people who are impacted and harmed. And what has struck me in this whole process, being impacted, is that typically we're the last people that get consulted, if we get consulted at all. And I just want to end by saying that, to my knowledge, the COG is the only animal of its type in the United States. And I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And I think it's an important vehicle, and we can do a lot of great things. And again, I just want to thank you, for coming tonight.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate that, and don't take that lightly, and appreciate all of what you've done to move the ball forward on this. You and everybody on this call, but you have really, I've seen you in action in DC and other places. I really appreciate the impact you've had.
Perfect. And it looks like Sandy was able to join us probably by phone.
Oh.
Sandy, do you want to?
Hey, Sandy.
Yeah. Hey, Phil. Hi, you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay. I am here from Yosemite National Park with a very weak signal, but having a great time. So thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Tony said and what others have said, and I'm just here to listen in. So welcome. Thank you for coming. And I will say the one thing that I've seen in community meetings lately is there is a wealth of information from community members that I don't know that Eagle staff even have, that I think it's such a great combination. If we can figure out a way for communities to share that information with Eagle and Eagle share information with communities, it's going to make us so much stronger. So you'll be hearing more from me, I'm sure, whether you like it or not.
I look forward to that, Sandy. You're an inspiration, and I just appreciate that all that you've done, and I congratulate you on joining late, so you didn't have to hear my preamble for 25 minutes.
I'm lucky, I guess.
Well timed. But anyway,
Well timed.
thanks for your kind words.
All right. And I think
Thank you very much, Phil. We really appreciate you coming on and joining with us.
Oh, thank you guys. Thanks for all that you're doing. And I will do follow up on the things that you brought up here. And one of them is I do want to stay connected with the people in the communities affected, and that includes all of you. So let us know how we can be helpful.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Phil. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Jason, would you like to introduce Paul to the group?
Sure. Well, Paul Jackson is the program manager for environmental compliance and emerging contaminants for PACE Labs, and he's here to give us a bit of an overview of the latest analytical methods and some of the changes that are coming and kind of what it means for those who are affected. So welcome, Paul, and look forward to the talk.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with you. And also wanted to share with Phil, I think he's already gone, though, but I hope he likes a big challenge, which is awesome. I am, as Jason said, our national program manager for a number of different things, but PFAS in particular. I live in Florida, but I'll share with you that I do have a connection with Michigan. I have a very, very close friend who is a researcher at University of Michigan, with who I got to go to my very first game at the Big House about a month ago. It was a great experience. I'm here today primarily, as the slide says, to talk about PFAS test methods. Like everything else in this Wild West show of PFAS, as I usually call it, test methods have been changing too. And it's very important now as they are changing to make sure that when testing is needed, that the right ones are selected. This first bullet is really what continues to lead the Wild West aspect of PFAS, in my opinion. Although this is finally obviously changing at the federal level, and certainly has been changing for the last few years in your state of Michigan, because you do have significant PFAS issues, but you're definitely not alone. Over half of the states in the country, like Michigan, have set guidance levels or enforceable limits for PFAS in one or more matrix, not necessarily in drinking water. Some have set enforceable limits for matrices that don't include drinking water, like the state of Texas. And these other bullets have impacted what we call the puzzle or the Wild West show, just a lot of variables when it comes to getting our arms around PFAS in general. But focusing on test methods, since that's what we do as a laboratory. I've been working on PFAS since 2012, when I helped bring PFAS online at Pace Analytical with good old EPA 537 way back then, in development for supporting US EPA's unregulated contaminant monitoring rule, specifically the third round of UCMR. That's the first time we tested over 4,200 of the nation's public water systems for 6 PFAS. And as I'm sure most or all of you already know, that we're doing that again in the 5th round of UCMR that just started sampling this past January and will run until the end of 2025. But now we're doing PFAS surveying in over 10,000 of the nation's public water systems for far more PFAS chemicals and at much lower limits. So a lot has changed since then, though. And specifically in the test methods, here's good old 537. For 18 compounds in drinking water, it's an internal standard method for quantification versus isotope dilution. Now, if anybody is familiar with that, isotope dilution is universally recognized in the PFAS scientific community as being superior to internal standard for a variety of reasons. But that doesn't mean that 537 is not a good test method. It's a very good test method. We're able to report levels down to 2 parts per trillion for the 18 compounds. just like 533, but 533 enables us to report for more compounds and does not replace 537. Up until the recent past, those two drinking water methods are the only two final EPA methods, with one small exception that I'll mention in a minute. So, and we've been testing for PFAS in wastewater, biosolids, groundwater, soil for years. What have we been doing all this time? Well, all the labs have been compelled to do the same thing. We've developed a lab-specific SOP, and in our case, it meets the requirements of DOD's method for the analysis of non-potable water and solids. It also meets the requirements of the state of Minnesota's PFAS guidance, the state of Wisconsin's PFAS guidance, all rolled into one SOP. Also a good method. We're certified by this method in many, many states. But this is where we're all headed when it comes to the analysis of these matrices other than drinking water. It's EPA draft method 1633. EPA has been developing this method with DOD, and DOD has adopted it and called it QSMB 24. It's actually valid for 8 different matrices, 40 compounds. It is an isotope dilution method. As this method becomes a final method, it will weed out the use of all lab-specific SOPs over time. The only question is how much time. And the reason why I say that is because this is the method that many labs are doing for long-term monitoring sites. And on many sites, these sites have sampling and analysis plans on record with their applicable state regulators like EGLE. So it will take time to replace this lab-specific SOP with 1633. So a little bit more about 1633, because there are some big differences in 1633 from the lab-specific SOPs. I already mentioned it's valid for many matrices, all those listed here. Joint EPA DOD method development, that's one of the reasons why it's been taking so long for 1633 to become a final method. Although EPA has told us all in writing that they intend to finalize this method by the end of this calendar year. Hallelujah, because it's sorely needed. We're currently on the 4th revision to draft method 1633. And as I said, this method will eventually eliminate the use of lab-specific SOPs. But there are some important differences between this and what we all do in the commercial PFAS lab world. Specifically, and this is important for especially folks who have to do groundwater management, 1633 requires over twice the water volume than lab-specific SOPs. So over a liter of water. That causes more time on site during sampling. That causes more cost in sample shipment for obvious reasons. 1633 requires additional QA/QC than the traditional lab-specific SOPs. Some of those are listed here. Again, additional cost, additional time in the lab for analysis. This bullet is applicable to solid samples like soil, sediment, biosolids. 1633 intentionally has a far more aggressive sample extraction step to pull PFAS out of those solid matrices so that we're getting a better picture of the content of PFAS in these types of samples. It's more aggressive, and it means that, for example, if we've been testing for soil or biosolids on a site for a long period of time because it is a contaminated site, and thanks to this regulatory process, we eventually switched to testing those samples by 1633. It means, guess what? It's entirely likely that the levels of PFAS for the same compounds that we've been reporting in the past are going to be higher. That's an important point for a variety of reasons, both regulatory, and legal and financial. And all these bullets I've been describing mean that, unfortunately, 1633 is more costly, on top of a test method that already is one of the highest cost test methods in the laboratory world. There's also some sample preparation restrictions that this is a little bit getting down into the weeds about what this method does. And I can answer any questions you might have about that, particularly offline if it's more convenient for you all. This is a really busy slide. The only real reason why I'm showing it is because these are the 40 PFAS compounds that we detect by 1633. Two things worth noting. The reporting limit in a water sample for many of these compounds is even lower than what we've been reporting in the past by our lab-specific SOP. 1 part per trillion in a water sample by 1633 for most of these compounds. That's very good. Also, 1633 includes a growing number of what we previously called PFAS precursor chemicals or replacement chemicals. For example, 3,3 FTCA, 5,3 and 7,3, 4,2 FTS, 6,2 and 8,2. These are chemicals that are sometimes, they fall into that category of PFAS that we sometimes call those short chain PFAS. That means they have more oxygen and or hydrogen atoms in the head or the tail of the molecule. It means they have weaker links, they're easier to treat. They break down in nature, unlike the traditional PFOA and PFAS and those longer chain PFAS chemicals. That's good for treatment, but it also unfortunately means that when these chemicals break down in nature or in a wastewater treatment plant process, they, along with the other chemicals known as precursor chemicals, turn into terminal PFAS chemicals like PFNA, like PFBS, PFOA, unfortunately. So EPAs and EGLE and the regulated community have growing concern about these hundreds, if not thousands, of precursor chemicals that are out there and in use, and what happens to them when they go through wastewater treatment plant process or they break down in nature. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. And here's where I start talking about it on this slide. This is a great graphic that EPA put out. And by EPA's estimation, the measured PFAS that we're currently detecting by methods like 1633 represents but a fraction of the PFAS chemicals that are out there in use. EPA's estimate that 89% of all PFAS chemicals fall into this category we're calling precursor chemicals that we're mostly not detecting by these compound-specific test methods. So what are we doing to try to measure them? We're doing this procedure called top assay. This procedure is getting growing interest from EPA and other organizations, especially because of wastewater dischargers that are using these precursor chemicals and sending them downstream to municipal wastewater treatment plants. The way we test for these precursor chemicals by top assay is threefold. We analyze a sample by the traditional methods, the lab-specific SOP, and soon 1633 for the targeted compound list that those methods are written for. We subject the sample to an aggressive heat and oxidation step, and then we analyze the sample, the oxidized sample again by the same method. What happens is if precursor chemicals are present, they are chemically changed to measurable PFAS compounds. This table over here on the right, I'll draw your attention to. The pre-oxidized sample detected no PFOA, no PFNA, and none of these other chemicals that are listed as ND or none detected. The post-oxidized sample revealed 35,000 parts per trillion of PFOA, and likewise these other levels of these chemicals. In all of these compounds that we measured in this sample, we detected about 51,000 ppt pre-ox and over 500,000 ppt post-ox. So this is alarming information, especially for the nation's wastewater treatment plant. And as a direct result, US EPA has asked us and some other laboratories to help them adapt the use and modify and include in draft method 1633 its ability to act in top assay to enable us to detect the mass of precursor chemicals that may be present in samples. So I know that's a lot to wrap your head around, but this is becoming growing concern, especially for the nation's wastewater treatment plants. There's a whole nother set of test methods that are of growing interest too, because I know you all have heard that there are thousands of PFAS chemicals in use, in production, all over the place. How can we possibly detect all those chemicals with what test method, especially when the regulatory process is kind of driven by compound-specific issues. And the way to do that is of growing interest is to test and detect organic fluorine and report a single number of the mass of organic fluorine present in the sample. TOF, AOF, EOF are methods we're using to do this. Since, as you can see, this is the PFOA molecule, there's a lot of fluorine there. There are other products and chemicals that contain organic fluorine, some pesticides, some pharmaceuticals. So if we can weed those out of the mix that potentially impacts the site, what ostensibly is left is going to be PFAS. That's the assumption. EPA developed a draft method 1621, adsorbable organic fluorine to do this. It uses chemistry that we in the environmental laboratory community have known and loved for decades, ion chromatography. We have been using ion chromatography to detect sulfate, chlorate, nitrate, nitrite, inorganic fluoride for years under Safe Drinking Water Act, Clean Water Act, and RCRA programs. So what we've done is we've adapted IC, ion chromatography. We analyze a sample for inorganic fluoride to get that data. We combust the sample, and in the case of 1621, we adsorb the fluorine that comes off as a result of combusting the sample onto granular activated charcoal or carbon, and then we extract the PFAS that are collected by the GAC and analyze it with methanol, and then analyze that sample again by ion chromatography, and we are able to detect about 2 micrograms per liter or parts per billion of organic fluorine with this method. EPA is especially interested in using 1621 in the nation's wastewater discharge program in PDES with this method, along with 1633. There is yet another group of methods that are coming out. EPA finalized EPA 8327 a couple of years ago for the RCRA program. However, EPA itself wrote into the method that this method has some deficiencies in it. Particularly 9 of the compounds have quality control challenges by 8327. But recently, ASTM developed D8421. D8421 is a superior method that enables us to detect up to 44 compounds. It uses isotope dilution like 1633 does. And through, and I won't try to explain test method equivalency procedures to you, but we're able to use equivalency to cite either method by the same SOP. And we're getting certification for this and are able to use that same SOP to detect down to 10 parts per trillion or nanograms per liter in aqueous matrices and down to 0.1 micrograms per kilogram in soil samples at lower cost than 1633 and a far more rapid turnaround time than we traditionally can do by 1633. It also uses a much lower volume of water with this SOP. So we believe that the nation's regulators and consultants are going to find it very useful for wide-scale site delineation and remediation, emergency responders on large-scale emergency responses that require Class B chemical firefighting foam, as well as treatment technologies for their pilot scale studies. Are going to find this method of substantial value. One last thing I want to make sure you know is that ASTM, given the nature of its mission, is developing SOPs and guidance to detect PFAS for intentionally added PFAS to consumer products. And I think Eagle and the legislature in Michigan is working on exactly this topic right now. So there'll be more rolling out about this in the very near future. We have developed a cryomill sample prep procedure and are using that for consumer and industrial products. And then we analyze that cryomilled sample for total fluorine and compound-specific test methods. And that's really it about the test methods. Do I have any questions out there?
Hey, Paul, there were a couple of questions in the chat. I'll start with the first one.
Right now.
This came from Lynn. Will these new testing methods make it easier to test PFAS in foam?
Thanks. That's a great question. And we don't know the answer to that yet because so far foam itself has not been addressed by EPA for 1633 nor 1621.
Next question is it the wastewater treatment process that converts these into harmful PFAS? So, the conversion of precursors to measurable other PFAS, is it the biological processes in the wastewater treatment plant that's doing the conversion?
Almost the same answer. We don't know yet. EPA has got a little research project going on right now to try to identify exactly what forms of treatment and which steps, like biological, as you mentioned, that are the principal drivers of the chemical change. We are waiting with bated breath to get results of those studies.
And there is one last question. Why add the, and then in quotes, intentionally added to regulations? I presume it's referring to, PFAS in commercial projects.
I'm sorry, can you restate that one more time?
So the question is, why add the, in quotes, intentionally added to regulations? So this is related to pending legislation around PFAS in consumer products.
I'm afraid that's a question we'd really have to ask the California legislature, because they've been leading the show on this in consumer products right now. I'm not sure.
I could answer that question if you'd like.
Please do.
Yeah, so the difference is intentionally added versus unintentionally added. If I make a product on a line that was making a product with PFAS in it, and then I switch my product line over to a product that did not have PFAS in it, it's likely due to the contamination of PFAS in that line, in that manufacturing method, that I will pick up PFAS. A good example would be, let's say I make a dish detergent with a surfactant in it that used to have PFAS, now I make one without. The contamination in that product line will well, I don't want to say contaminate, but will unintentionally add PFAS to that product. So that's the difference between intentionally added, I did it because I wanted it there, versus unintentionally added, which usually means that the manufacturing process, a good example would be a chrome plater that used PFAS before, then stops using it. However, his tanks, his piping, his lines, they all still bleed PFAS into the products. So that's the difference.
Thanks, Michael. Good point. And I noticed in the chat, Michael, you mentioned that the ASTM D8421 method with its reporting limit does not measure low enough to meet the PFNA or PFOA MCLs in drinking water. I assume those are the ones you're referencing, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And obviously will not reach US EPA's proposed MCLs of 4 for PFOA and PFAS by any means. So we see its value as more for, we see its value more outside of the drinking water regulated community.
Yeah. So the question that dealt with foam, EPA is working on methods to test foam, trying to come up with a method of collecting foam and then also a method for testing. So they are working on that. That's being done out of Cincinnati. ORD is working on that.
Thanks. I think I see Lynn and Connie have questions.
Yes, thank you. This is Lynn again. Thanks for answering that question, Michael. I guess one of the reasons I ask about the foam is it's pretty clear when you see it on the water that it's foam, and you know that you don't want to be touching it. What my concern has been, and maybe you could let me know if there's research being done, but I've gone to lakes before where I've seen foam and then it kind of dies down and it goes into the sand. And then again, it comes back up and then it goes back into the sand. And I see little children, I bring this up, but I see it all the time. Not all the time, but frequently enough. I asked myself, okay, so this foam was here an hour ago. Now it's kind of gone into the sand, and maybe it's not a lake where there's a lot of movement. Question is, what about the sand that they're playing with? And I don't know, Michael or Paul, I don't know if you guys, if anyone's testing the effect of it being absorbed into areas where people recreate. But you don't see it as foam anymore.
If the foam is a result of AFFF and the foam is settled on the sand, it's going to be in the sand. The only question is how much, and we certainly can test for that. I can testify to.
We could
test. Yeah, the sand will depend on how much organic material, total organic carbon. In other words, how much organic materials, plant materials, other types of organics. PFAS itself doesn't like sand that well. It will stick to some sands. The more organic materials in that sand, the better it will stick. I think she's speaking about a surface water foam and not an AFFF foam. Foams that are generated on bodies of water.
Yeah, like there's a little lake nearby called Versluis Lake, and I have observed a foam on the lake. I have observed children playing in the sand, and right up to the water's edge, and the puddles that they you know they love to dig holes, of course, and then I see the foam floating on these puddles, and it's not like pure sand like on Lake Michigan. It is an inner lake, and I have an ongoing concern with the close interaction of very small children at the water's edge, and I don't hear much about that, but I have a lot of photos that show it, and it's something I would love to have researched. I wouldn't want my children doing that, especially for a lake that already has a warning for fish, which again is not even posted at the lake. So it's very practical, heartfelt concern I have. So that's it.
Okay, Paul, this is Connie. 2 quick questions for you. If you live near, suppose there's a source of PFAS and they're going to install monitoring wells, or there already are monitoring wells, but they're made out of PVC pipe. Would that cross-contaminate and make the results higher or would you suggest getting rid of the PVC monitoring wells for groundwater and installing stainless steel ones? What's your thoughts on that? And then what is the cost of sample analysis using draft method 1633?
I think I'll defer the PVC versus stainless steel question to someone like Jason or perhaps Michael.
Okay.
Because this is really more up their alley than laboratory testing. But cost, obviously, I can speak to that. I'll just tell you that as a ballpark per sample cost, let's say for a drinking water sample by 537, the cost per sample is in a range of about $300. The
That's
cost
not
per
as big.
Sorry?
That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, there's a lot of nuances to that. For example, there's EPA 533, which costs more. But to test a sample by 1633 in a water sample is about $125 or so more. And to test a solid sample by 1633, it's about $150 or so more a sample.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hey, Connie, I was going to respond to your question about PVC versus stainless steel. And generally, there shouldn't be an issue with PVC, provided in either case they didn't use like Teflon tape or anything for the joints.
Okay.
There may be a problem with stainless steel, however, PFAS has been found to stick, quote unquote, stick to stainless steel.
It's true, Mike.
There are micropores and microfractures in stainless steel, and we found through, for example, a aircraft hangar that has an AFFF foam system for fire suppression. When they took that apart, they found that PFAS had plated, well, plated may not be the right term, but sort of like created a film on the stainless steel that was extremely hard to get off. So stainless steel, it could be an issue using stainless steel for a monitor well. I wouldn't recommend it.
So Mike, what would you recommend?
I would go with PVC at the moment. That is what people are using, and that seems to be okay. I believe there are studies that are going on that very question, Connie. I haven't seen them all. I know it's been talked about. I have seen a lot of work done on stainless steel, and there are definitely problems with PFAS coating stainless steel. Other metal, brass, for example, even is a sink for PFAS. So brass materials, for example, in fire trucks, they're finding that PFAS just loves that material. It may be because it's somewhat porous, but there is definitely a problem with brass fittings in a fire truck.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul?
Yes, I raised the hand. This is Joe Kang. Thanks for your thorough presentation, Paul. I got one quick question.
Shoot.
So we're dealing with different methods for water and solids and all that. Are we there, or can we get there soon when we can build a mass balance when we have a mixture of liquid and solids?
Are we talking about specific PFAS compounds or for the entirety of all PFAS present?
Individual compound, but in the big picture, we talk about regulation going with a limit on water, and then on different situation with biosolids disposal, we talk about what's in it. But if you look at the total picture, with all the analytical methods we have, are we there to build a mass balance completely?
Well, Joe, my interpretation of your question is that to report the entirety of all PFAS that might be present, mass balance is one way to describe that. So far, the only method that our line of methods is the measurement of organic fluorine. And EPA, as I said, has developed draft method 1621. That's for aqueous matrices, but they are working on the development of extractable organic fluorine for solid matrices and total fluorine in solid matrices. So my answer would be yes, and that's how.
So how soon you think we'll get there?
Well, 1621 is a drafted, developed method that a few labs are doing, but right now there's not much demand for 1621, although that's going to change over the course of the next year or so. The methods for solid matrices should be issued in draft form over the course of this and next year. And as soon as they are issued in draft form, there are labs that will be able to run them like PACE, and EPA will enable us to go ahead and run them in draft form before they become final.
And then once the rules are finalized, what's your estimation of the cost?
So far, draft method 1621 cost in the range of about $400 to $500 a sample. As the method becomes closer to its final version, and as more labs put it online, and as demand grows for the method, that price is entirely likely to drop.
Okay. So I guess I'll sit tight and wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
All right,
Jen.
folks. I've really got to run. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Paul.
Bob.
That's great information.
Pleasure. And oh, by the way, over time, I spend more and more time in your fine state. So don't hesitate to reach out to me, okay?
Excellent.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I think now we can move on to the subcommittee reports. Unless anybody has any comments that they want or questions that they want to talk further on regarding Paul's presentation. No? Oh, Daniel?
Yeah, that was really informative and interesting. I'm still digesting a lot of, what that could mean for, community-based studies, and as Michael was talking about the different, plumbing materials, that got me thinking about a lot of other things. Is we're getting increasingly questions about what are the best plumbing materials for PFAS, similar to how do you keep lead out of drinking water with the materials you use. People are interested in how do you keep PFAS out of your drinking water. So I think there's a lot to think about there, but I'm still digesting it. Good presentation. I'm glad we had him for this meeting.
Thank you. Joe, did you still have your hand up?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Okay. On your agenda, it does have website review subcommittee as the first subcommittee report. Is there, Brad, do you have anything to report on that?
I'm not on that subcommittee. I'm on the website review subcommittee.
No, I know. On the actual agenda that was sent out, the first report was for website review.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. I'm looking at the slide.
Yeah.
Yes.
No problem.
We did have a good meeting, good discussion today. Kelly is asking for not just our subcommittee's input, but the COG group in general. with help to identify what we're looking at probably would be described as priority information, which ought to be put on a new or a revised or revamped resident web page, so that when somebody is newly informed about having potentially having PFAS in their drinking water based on recent new sampling or whatnot, things that they would want to need to see and identify most quick, initially. And so she put together a list of some of the things that are on the various websites, like the PFAS 101 video and the COG community awareness information. So if those types of things, which will definitely be on the website or on this particular new website or revised website. So we were looking at providing her with any other ideas that we might have. So if you could identify things as individuals that you may have seen at various community group meetings that you've attended or been a part of, things that you would like to see, if you could shoot me those ideas so that we can provide those to Kelly and make sure that they get included on the list, that would be great.
Great. Thanks very much, Brad.
All right.
And so the next one that was on our agenda today was the prevention subcommittee. I don't think that Dave is on here, is he? I can say that the website or the prevention subcommittee did not meet this month. And actually Kelly was doing a lot of email conversation back and forth regarding the analytics involving the reporting of the PFAS 101, I think, for that. And I believe, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you felt that it was going to be accurate going forward?
The analytics, yes. The analytics, I am told we can rely on.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. As for the engaging the public subcommittee, we did meet today. There were just a few of us, and Connie had brought up some interesting points. And also, one of the things that was discussed, we did actually spend some time, Kelly had reported on some of the things, and Rick, the things that they had discussed during the website review committee. But Connie had brought up that there was a need for more transparency, and I actually think that Phil Roos covered that a little bit in his talk today. And actually, we did bring up the fact that we would like for him to review the public notification document that the COG has presented and to get back with the COG on his thoughts. And Connie had suggested that when a community has contamination, to be able to look for the source, and that includes groundwater testing sampling methods to be publicly available for the residents, or results, I think, actually. And Kelly and Connie did talk about the Michigan Enviro portal, that they both felt that it was difficult to navigate. And Kelly agreed that she had to explain a lot of the process to not only residents in that, but also to the applicants. I think that covers.
Can I clarify that just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So yes, initially when My Enviro was rolled out, it was known as My Waters. And it has come tremendous far away from what it was, being user friendly. But yes, initially when it was first rolled out, both residents and applicants had a hard time using it. I do not help them anymore.
Okay. Very good. Are there other members that are on this call who use that on a regular basis? Have you experienced that it's easier or not? Daniel?
Sorry, I had my hand up from before, but I was actually about to chime in on this one too. So, yeah, it certainly has gotten much better than in the past. I do think there's still quite a bit of improvements that could be made to the interface and basically like we're always talking about with website stuff, trying to reduce the number of clicks or just making it, you know, impossibly obvious where you need to go to get various things if you are, you know, a person that's not approaching this, you know, with a technical background like like a lot of people historically would have been with the, you know, the My Waters system. A couple other sort of strange things that we encountered just in the past week as we were looking at Part 201 sites. You know, the data and the tables that are available through the MI Enviro portal are different. The underlying data numbers and values are all the same, but they include different amounts of things in the MI Enviro portal versus what you get if you Google the ArcGIS system and get there directly. So that was a little weird. That took us a second to sort out why we had these ArcGIS layers that weren't matching up. Again, all the numbers on like a per site basis are the same, but you know, it was including different things in the table. So we weren't sure what was happening on that. So there's some inconsistency on like where the data is being pulled from, and I don't understand what's happening on the back end on that. The other sort of screwy thing that we encountered, which I think is more of a communication issue, and again, how the data is used internally versus how it's interpreted externally. So when we looked at the Part 201 contaminated sites, there's a large number of sites that are categorized as controlled, interim, or controlled, presumably permanently. And if you dig into any sector of the state where those sites are listed as controlled, particularly in the interim category, there are a lot of sites that are not controlled or contained. So, you know, whatever that designation means internally for Eagle, that, you know, that doesn't represent how somebody would logically interpret that. And it, you know, an obvious example in Southeast Michigan is the Gelman site, where the plume is continuing to spread. You know, the remediation efforts have not been successful at stopping that plume from spreading towards the Huron River, but it's listed as, you know, being under control on an interim basis. And there's ongoing litigation and negotiation between the parties and so forth. So I think there needs to be some work done about how specifically the Part 201 sites are categorized and how those designations are communicated, even if it's just as simple as changing the names to something more descriptive or clear. So that's just a couple specific things that we encountered recently.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Connie.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dan on that interim control thing. That just doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing, if whoever designed the Michigan Environmental Portal should tell people, the ordinary public citizen, if you want to access the Michigan Environmental Portal for public documents, click the arrow that's like going northwest. Who would ever know that? That was one of the most frustrating things. I even called up the Environmental Assistance Center and say, how do I get to public documents on for these different sites? And believe it or not, the person at the Environmental Assistance Center could not figure it out either. So we have some major issues. I think it's very well designed if you are an applicant for a wetland destruction permit. Boy, it's easy for you as an applicant, but for a potential a person who's a member of the public who would like to comment, you can't do it. You can't figure out how to get to public documents. So I consider that Michigan Environmental Portal not very transparent at all. And I really don't like it. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. And Lynn.
Okay, I hope this is, I'm the correct Lynn. I just had a couple of questions. Right near me, we just had a new site come up in the last week. It's called the Fruitland Township Dump. And Duck Lake and Duck Creek are directly in line with where the wastewater would go. So they did some test drilling there. They found out there was a lot of dumping done in unlined ditches. They just dug a ditch and then did some dumping. And so the township supervisor had asked Eagle to do some test wells, and we did find some high amounts of PFAS in there. And we've also coincidentally noticed some large amounts of foam, which I'm hoping to get tested in the next week. Given that we're all in this area, in my area, on private wells, what is available to us as citizens to get remediation done at this dump site? Is this something where we have to go for grants, or even if it hasn't been shown to move into the private wells yet, is there anything for citizen groups that we could do to get some remediation done at that site, to get all the stuff that was dumped there removed and taken to a lined landfill? And then my other question was, same thing with the foam. If this does come out to be a high amounts of PFAS foam, what resources at the state level are available to the watershed group and the Lake Association to find out where it's coming from?
All right, I'll take that one, Lynn, as best as I can. I have a little bit of information about Fruitland, and maybe Mike Jury can jump in if he's got more. As I understand, the Fruitland Township dump is owned by the township,
That's correct.
was run by the township, so that would make them the liable party in this case, which means they have the responsibility to do cleanup and investigation. So as I understand it, they're still in the investigation stage to understand, if there's any houses that have been impacted, where they're using monitoring wells to delineate the groundwater migration to understand the extent of contamination. So that's still in the starting stages. Since there is a liable party associated with that, there wouldn't be state grants necessarily to get that site cleaned up, unless there was a grant program specifically for municipalities like that, which at this point I don't know of any. So for remediation, that will be up to whatever the township investigates, and then what they look at, what's feasible, what's economical, and what will prevent the exposures and migration. So we'll have to look at that as the information comes through. And as far as the foam, there really is no resources for foam, because as Lynn said, it's there some days, it's not. So we work, at least at the state level, to identify those sources and to prevent the migration of PFAS into the surface water bodies, because you can't really remediate it as foam. You have to try to keep it out of the water so it's not creating the foam. So, Mike, is there anything else that you know about that site?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. It being a landfill or a dump, whichever it is, depending on what years it was in operation, certainly there is no doubt that certain items were disposed of there that would contain PFAS, consumer articles. So things like carpeting, textiles, furniture, personal care products, all those types of things have PFAS in them, things that we use daily. So to have that said that there's PFAS coming from that landfill, not surprising. You covered Part 201 well. If the township is a liable party, they are the ones that need to address the issue.
And I would talk, Lynn, with the township about what kind of outreach they plan to do to the community. Because we're happy to do some sort of a township meeting or reach out to the community. But we're still in the preliminary stages of talking with them about their information. And as I understand it, they have reached out to do some reswell sampling.
Yeah, if the township has records of who dumped there, other than citizens, they may be able to go after those parties that use that landfill. So I don't know the size of it or who may have disposed of materials there, but the township may have the ability to go after those companies that dispose of their waste there.
Okay, we're planning, I think it's Peter Van Heest. He's the one who's in charge of the communication about the cleanup at the site. So we have a tentative goal
that's
of
right, we do.
November for our first public meeting. So I'm working quite a bit with the township supervisor, Jeff, and so Marcinkowski. So we're being pretty aggressive about getting the information and that out there. I know we had talked about this before, but it hasn't come up with me personally, but the Peter Van Heest at Eagle, said it wasn't his decision, but I have to make a FOIA request and pay for it for all the information that they have regarding the site and the test results and any other information they have about the Fruitland dump site, which kind of irks me a little bit. I wish if you were an MPART member or something that there was a more expedient way, or at least there wasn't a charge for me to get the information, for me to FOIA it from them.
Yeah. If you know exactly what you want, we can try to make it as minimal as possible. I think that especially for township dump records, it depends on how much we've got. If it's paper files and somebody's got to go in and actually copy it and do all that, not all of our records are digital. But Lynn, there are some records there's some records in my environmental portal, but there's also some records in the RRDs, what they call the RIDE database. There's some records attached to some of those files, not all of them, but there are some in the Grand Rapids district. So you could ask Peter if any of those records are already out there, that you can do that. But my guess is if he didn't direct you that way, then it's probably that the records are probably still in paper files.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Connie? Connie, did you raise your hand again or?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute myself, but I totally agree with Lynn has just stated. I feel the exact same way. As a COG member, when I'm trying to respond to people's questions who live near contaminated sites, and I try to get the information, I can't get it. So what I think MPART needs to do is to put all the databases available to COG members so we can try to do our research before we go over to, say, the Warren District Office to get information from the paper files. Let us have access at least to the electronic records so that we can be more responsive to the people in our county. So Lynn, you're saying exactly what I had said to Abby, I think a couple of meetings ago. We really need something that will help COG members And I think it would help MPART to be more transparent, or Eagle to be more transparent with the data, and help us and help our communities. That's it. Thank you.
Kelly.
Yeah, speaking of the resources, we did during one of the COG meetings have a slide with all of the different links to the various ride resource, the My Enviro resource, the Well Logic resource, all of that you do have access to. So I'll dig for that and provide those links to you again.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and there are, I know the goal is to make all of the documents publicly available, so we don't have to do FOIA, but we're just not there yet. RRD especially is making a really big push. We've got about 40 people that are just scanning files, and that's all they do all day. But even with that many people, we are still, we get I don't know, 6,000 FOIAs a year, and we get just a ton of paper ton of documents that come into the districts that need to go into the files as well. And so to get through all the backlog, it's a lot of work. So they're working their way through it. Most of Grand Rapids is almost all completely electronic for RRD's files, but there also is waste management files, and there's water resources files, and there's air quality files. And so not all the divisions are making the same push, but it depends on which district you're in as to what files you might be able to get electronically. I know that we have just recently on the RIDE database opened up a lot of those reports that are attached to site files in that they've opened them up and are just recently, those are available. Now you can't find everything, but there are some files that are available. So we can always try to, and I could try to bring someone in if you guys would like. We can try to bring somebody in for one of the meetings to show us how to get to some of those things as well.
Thank you. The last subcommittee regarding membership, we did not meet as a group for membership, but we did put out, I'm sure you guys got too many emails this month, as far as asking whether people wanted to remain on the membership list or not. And I did not receive anybody respond that they would like to be taken off the list. So we are going to have to discuss that again. So that will be one of the topics when we do have our member only meeting, how we want to try and deal with that. So
I think, Mary, for some of these members who haven't attended in like a year, yeah, I think we probably should have some sort of an email just confirming that they want to stay a member, so that if they're truly...
That's what we did. We just did that.
Okay. Didn't you do the opposite and ask them if they wanted to leave?
I think people could interpret it that way as well, but
just curious.
Either way, I think we will have to go back, and I don't know if it's specifically in the charter or not, whether, if you don't attend a certain number of meetings that you are not considered a member anymore, or if we would, be looking at that. So, okay, before we move on to the next discussion, Daniel?
Yeah, I think you basically summed it up there at the end. I think it is totally reasonable for us to just as a group set a rule that we vote on and so forth that says, if you haven't been present for X number of meetings, your membership expires, and if you want to get, readmitted, you can do that. But, I think that's totally reasonable that if you're not present, not engaging for however long we want to say, then, there's just an automatic expiration. I think that's totally reasonable. And I think, we could even, send out a message to all the group, it's, you have a generous time to respond to this email. And if you don't get a response, then, we're counting that as, not present or whatever. So I think we've given people plenty of time to chime in on what they want to do. And I think we just need to set a rule that's clear and let everybody know.
Thank you. Sandy.
Yeah, I was actually going to say pretty much the same thing Daniel said. I really believe that if people haven't been to the last 6 months worth of meetings and didn't respond to the email, I think we can assume that they have other things they're doing. I think it's also important we understand that just because you're not a member doesn't mean you can't tune into meetings and listen in and participate and ask questions and all of that. So it's not like they're being banned from anything. It just means that we don't have to list off a bunch of names at the roll call that aren't a part of it. And it will make our ability to add members who really want to participate, I think, a lot easier. So I agree with Daniel. I think we should just just decide that those that haven't been here for, I don't know, 6 months seems reasonable, that we take them off the membership list unless they've reached out to say for some reason that they want to be on. And then we can start backfilling in and looking for members that want to be a little more actively involved.
I think Connie or Sandy, that's a good point, because the fact is that if the members who are not attending, that means their community is also not represented, and any PFAS information is not making its way back to those communities either. So we'll definitely be looking at that, particularly in the member-only meeting coming up. Thanks. Hope you have a good trip, Sandy. Lynn, did you still have a question or?
No, I'm sorry. I think I raised my hand twice by accident, but I did have a question in the chat. I noticed that it's very hard to figure out if a consumer product that you have, they may say like hand sanitizers commonly have PFAS in it. But when I looked at the ingredients of mine and it said it was C10 to C30 alkyl acrylate cross polymer, that sounds like a PFAS to me, but it's hard to look it up and see. I've got the CAS number and all that good stuff, but I was just wondering, I spent a lot of time looking and I did not see it on a PFAS list, but it's for a chemical that I use to teach kids. I'm putting insects inside sanitizer gel inside a container. And so I'm trying to go PFAS free. Does anybody with a chemistry background, can they tell me if that is a PFAS chemical, the C10 to C30 alkyl acrylate cross polymer?
How about we have Mike Jury look that up, and I bet he can do that before the end of the meeting. How's that for a challenge, Mike? Okay.
And then books for educating
yeah,
me
sure. Give me a second here. Read that off to me.
It's in the
Give me
chat.
if you got, yeah, can you put the CAS number in the chat?
Oh, sure.
If you do that, I'll look it up and I'll try to get you an answer before. Well, I got 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
And then, is there a good book for self-education for me before I go into, doing public education and whatnot? Can you guys just personally recommend? I know there's a big one out there called Forever Chemicals that costs a couple $100. I saw it on sale today for like $60. That might be worth it. But
that's
as a source for information, it's there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and a lot of it is actually outdated, even on websites that you think it would be current on, as far as the number of PFAS and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Lynn, that's one of the things that we're trying to work together with the website review committee is exactly that. What kinds of resources can we put out there for people to try to figure out what contains a PFAS, what doesn't, what kind of websites that are helpful. I don't know that I've actually heard of any books that were terribly helpful, but that's not something we've looked for either. So we'll see if we can dig up something for next month's meeting. How about that?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And I do have Mary some updates. So if I can get
Yep.
the last 8 minutes.
That's fine.
All right. So we do have a couple of new, as Lynn was just telling us about the Fruitland Township landfill that is being added as a new MPART site. And so we will be having, as she said, the project manager is working on setting up a township meeting. And we don't have it set yet, but I do believe it will be in November. Right now, our upcoming town halls, we've got one tomorrow night out in Muskegon County. That's Eggleston Township public meeting. That one started as a contaminated mobile home park that we stepped out, and now are at 150, 200-ish homes. So that will be a good meeting for residents to come find out what that's all about. So join us if you can. And then at the end of the month, we're going to go down to the Richland area, and North 34th Street is a plating facility that has been bankrupt for a long time, but it was a state-funded project where we've been doing a pump and treat for a long time on chrome plating materials. And then just recently, in the last couple of years, realized that there was PFAS there. So a lot of investigation work's been going on there. That'll be October 30th. Both of those are in person. And then another one for the Pellston. This is one's around the Pellston community. It's an open house, but that one is emanating from the Pellston Airport. And I did want to report out real quick on some of before we go to that one, Kelly, last month we reported, we didn't have time. We told you about a whole bunch of upcoming meetings, but I just wanted to report out, as Lynn said, we did have some really very successful town halls. We had one in Ionia for what's called the American and NODCO. It's a Superfund site, but it's recently the business has been called Ventra. And that one is in Ionia, still an operating facility, still has quite a bit of PFAS. And so we did have about 20 residents. There's not a lot of drinking water wells there, but there's a couple, and we do have some hits. So 20 people showed up to that one. That was a great meeting. Then the next night we had one at Cortland Township for another discovery of PFAS around the Wolverine Worldwide headquarters. That was Kent County, and we had about 60 people in that room, including Lynn and Sandy. So thank them for their participation in that meeting. And then the next night, because we did 3 in a row that week, Hillsboro, which is a neighborhood, we don't know the source of the PFAS contamination there. But that one did start because of somebody doing their own self-testing in their neighborhood. And like I said, we're still not sure exactly of the actual source, but that one's in Cascade Township in Kent County. And we did end up with about 70 people at that town hall. Again, a really, really good one. And really good participation. The next week, we went and did what we call 2440 Highland Road in Howell. That was, again, adjacent to a Superfund site. I really didn't find much. Most of the sampling was done across the river. The Superfund site there is the Shiawassee River Superfund site, and had pretty low levels in most of the res wells out there. So we did end up with about 20 people at that one. And then to finish off that week, we did a PFAS 101, we're calling it, down in the Yankee Springs area. In Berry County, and had about 15 people show up to that one. So really good engagement. It's been great to get out and actually meet people one-on-one, talk to them. We've been getting our senators and reps have been sending their staffers out to these meetings, so that's been great, and just really good engagement. So thanks everybody who did show up to these meetings. Appreciate your participation and reaching out. So we'll just continue. If you guys have any availability to come over to Eggleston or down to Richland, love to see you. I don't think I'll be able to get up to Pellston for the Pellston one on November 2nd myself, but we will have staff up there, obviously, that will be participating in the open house. So feel free to join us. And last but not least, I'm very excited to say that our registration is open for our Great Lakes PFAS Summit. It is a virtual thing. It is one of the perks that I can give you guys as a COG member. I can't waive FOIA fees, but I can give you free registration to our Great Lakes PFAS Summit. It's a half a day on the 5th, all day on the 6th and the 7th. And the beauty of this is it's entirely virtual. The all of the talks will be recorded. So there's 2 talks for every hour. And so you'll have a choice of which talk to listen to, but you can always go back and listen to the other talk if you wanted to hear both of them. So very excited about that. Please feel free to register now or wait a little bit. We're basically doing unlimited registration, but they are technical talks, but I think it'll be I'm very excited about it. It's always been a great venue. And my goal for this particular PFAS Summit is to make sure that as we, like the director said, as we endure to be a national leader, that we become a worldwide leader on PFAS as well. There's a lot of good that's been done in the state of Michigan, and we want to be able to share the information, the science, the data, and share it with everybody around the world so that we can get everybody up to speed on PFAS and we can take care of this beast once and for all. So join us for that. All right, Kelly, do we have any other slides?
Just to clarify, you do have to make sure that you're registered to have access to the recordings. So if you do not register, you will not have access to the recordings.
Yeah, and you do need to, there's a Wahoo app that they have you download, or you can watch it on your computer. It's so much easier with the app, and it organizes it. And anyways, just register, join, download the app, and come and join us. So, okay, Mary, back to you. 1 minute.
Can you clarify that when people do register, can they do it directly on? Is there any kind of button you have to push that you're a COG member so you get free registration, or how does that?
In the chat, Kelly just put the registration code. It's a PFAS-COMP, C-O-M-P, and that's all you need to type in there. So we'll tell you again next month, but yeah, it's that's free to all COG members. So PFAS-COMP.
Okay, thank you. I did want to bring up for future topics. I did have a email today from Harry Castle. He is the MDHHS person dealing with PFAS engagement. And I had been in touch with him previously about he and Brandon Thomas possibly coming onto a COG meeting and giving information on what's available from MDHHS to give to the community. And so he had sent me an email. It says, "Hello, Mary. It's been a while since we last spoke about this. I wanted to reach out and give a bit of an update on where things are on our end. Currently, me and Brandon are working on a short overview of community engagement for PFAS, as well as some information on the health education resources that are available. Once this is completed, we will pass it through internal MDHHS review process. The amount of time that the review process can take varies, so we may need to wait until a presentation is a little further through before scheduling a date for the presentation itself. All that said, would you like us to reach out to give you updates on the presentation status so you aren't left in the dark? So I did respond to him and let him know that we would welcome their presentation as they get it available and let us know future dates. So thank you very much. I know Connie had brought up in the leadership meeting that we had that she is looking to add Courtney Kerrigan, a professor with Michigan State University, to come on coming up discussing blood testing for PFAS. So that will be one of the future topics. Does anybody else have any topics that they would like to bring up?
For Lynn, this is Mike. I put a note in there. Thank you for picking a extremely hard one to find information on. I'll get your email address from Kelly, and after I do some more looking, I went to my usual suspect places, but man alive. I did find it has a name, Carbopol, and the Chinese make a lot of it. But other than that, I will find a chemical formula for it, and then we'll know for sure. But
well, thanks, Mike.
yeah, I looked 10 minutes and my God, what a mess.
Yeah.
And you're somebody who knows this process.
Yeah, I'm somebody that knows where to go look, and yeah.
The
What I will
formula,
do is use my chemical, I have a massive chemical dictionary that may be able to, made by Chemical Rubber Company. The CRC is a fabulous document. I may find it in there, but I won't give up till I find you an answer.
Thanks, Mike.
For the next meeting, I propose that we give Mike 3 different chemicals and we make one of them up and see if he can figure out which one we made up.
I'll go after the chemistry guy. Okay. I propose we give you guys PFAS Jeopardy. That will be entertaining.
I gave a one-liner for Abby in the chat box. It says, Michigan enduring national PFAS leader. I cannot hear you.
I said for a new license plate, that would be fabulous.
It's a lot better than the winter water wonderland.
Yes, exactly. All right, and Kelly just put the link to the registration for the PFAS Summit in your in the chat as well. But we'll make sure you guys get it via email as well.
Yep, and we are having that added to our homepage. The web people just haven't gotten to it yet. So you should see that in the next couple of days. When you do register, after you get through this series of, they want to know, you know, where you're coming from, whether it be private citizen or whole list of things. But this is where you will put the PFAS -comp. So all cap letters.
And it should come up with a total price of 0.
Yep. And I did not test it, but let's just see.
Thank you.
Yes. So it'll come up as 0.
There you go. Excellent. All right. Well, Mary, Sandy, Jason will work with you guys on the next agenda then, unless we hear for anything from anybody else for topics.
sounds good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming out. Appreciate it. I will mention also that Sandy had brought up the fact that we might not want to do a December meeting. So keep in mind whether you agree or disagree, and we'll talk about that next month. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.